we're gonna sit down.
Yeah.
So, I guess the starting point is just this idea, and it's quite common, or that I think originates from this woman called Judith Butler, who's quite just like, she wrote this book I think called Gender Studies or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she said something along the lines of gender is a social construct and the body is a kind of field of interpretive possibilities. So the body isn't just given, it's kind of something you can interpret.
Well, yeah, everything's up for interpretation, including your physical circumstance. By the way, hi, Rocknrollsailor Journal. We're at Paper Fetish on the first of Creative Writings evenings. It's going to be happening every Tuesday from now on. And we took a punt on working today around the phrase, what's the meaning of gender as a social construct? Now there's half libraries full of that stuff. There's like tons of discussions being had about that stuff, but still, more doesn't hurt.
Well,
So who have we got at the table tonight?
John and
John, excellent.
Background,
you're a writer.
I'm a writer, free thinker, and I'm not afraid to speculate on things that I shouldn't speculate on, because I'm not an expert. Right?
Oh yeah, no,
So,
there's no yeah, sure. No, I mean, if you know, if you're not allowed to speculate on things because you're not an expert, how the fuck do you ever become an expert, for starters?
Right. This is the whole thing with an expert is from protecting.
You know, there's one thing in life that keeps you alive, and that's fucking curiosity. You know what I mean?
And my name is Tim. I'm an intern here at Paper Fetish, and I'm just joining the table to, sort of give my opinion if I can.
Yes, of course. My pleasure.
So, yeah.
So, but we're also concentrating on writing. So, basically, how about we start by defining sort of the subject in a 5-line poem?
Okay. So we write a poem individually or together?
Yeah, no, individually.
Okay.
So about the first thing that comes to mind when you read that question.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, let's do that and let's give 10 minutes.
5 lines. I would say less, but okay.
Let's give it 10 minutes. Let's give it 10 minutes on the meaning of gender as a social construct.
Oh yeah.
Can I go? Well, you were talking about you do your makeup in a private zone and then go out in public. And you said like maybe it's interesting for people to see somebody, constructing their gender in a public area.
Yeah.
And my link to that is that when you don't see it like visually, you don't see me putting on my makeup in the metro, or maybe sometimes I do, but when a man approaches me in the metro, the way that I react, or like I sort of, it's not really a process, but it's more like that way you also can see like sort of the way that I construct gender.
Yeah.
It's more, in that part I sort of like, also you can see like sort of a process. But I'm not really sure if it would be considered a process now that I say it.
Huh. I wonder, I'm just like thinking, where does like humour come into all this? Like, I remember a few years ago seeing some pictures of my grandfather, I think, in the Second World War, and he was out on base somewhere in Africa, and there was one of the pictures was of him and his mates, and they were dressed in bras and stuff, and just like being really exaggerated, and just it's kind of funny to see, because all the other pictures were like this, proper men in army kind of outfits, and then there's all the time picture.
How you doing now?
Anyway, so I don't know. There's something about the humour in that. Like,
well,
I feel like a lot of modern.
I find the current discussion on gender and
It's
whatever. I find it all very interesting. The only appalling thing I find is that somebody came up with the word gender neutrality, which feels like, you know,
Yeah,
hands
there's
have been
such a lack
sewn
of
up and
humour in
balls
that.
have been cut.
Yeah.
You know, there's a
You know,
real
it's,
lack
I
of
mean, you know,
playfulness in it,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
to me it should be full gender awareness, but anyway. But the thing is, if you go to natural tribes, like, you know, I enjoy the animist point of view, you know, nature people and stuff. And there it is, it's interesting to see that regardless of the fact that they don't have all these, you know, shopping streets full of women's clothing and you know, stereotype media and this and that, they also have pretty much every form from straight male, straight female to mixed to, you know.
Right, right.
But they basically deal with it like, oh, okay, you have this opposition between male and female, and then you have people in the middle that sort of embody both. So they're kind of sacred in a way, because they manage, you know, they're part of
You
they're
talk
part of both worlds.
people who live in an animistic
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah.
And by
To
animism you mean...
to them, people of, let's say, mixed gender
Yeah.
are considered like they have access to both worlds, both the male and the female world, and therefore they're sort of like a double spirit. So
Right, right.
they're special. You know what I mean? You have to treat them with a special
Where are
special
those tribes?
attention. Hmm?
Where are those tribes?
Where are those tribes? You find that actually pretty much all over the world.
And they still exist now.
Africa, Polynesia, in Native American tribes as well. Yeah.
Gonna live there.
You gotta live there. No, I find that more and more that's sort of where modern society is going as well.
Animism, yeah, I think technology...
Animism for one thing. I mean
technology has its
basically
animism.
science
Yeah.
has proven it to be the only true religion, because you know animism states that everything is alive and everything is energy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's alive. You know.
But it,
You know.
Yeah.
That's how, I mean, it's a shortcut, obviously, but
it has to go deeper
I
than
like the idea.
just ideas, right? It has to
But,
be actually a
um,
way of looking and seeing things. Like I wonder what would it take to actually have this kind of what you were saying is like sacredness or something. How did you describe that again? Say that again. What you meant by this? There's something.
well, basically the fact that
postulate
the fact that they're like of mixed gender or
Right.
you know, to keep
yeah.
it simple, right? Also means that oh great, so now we're what?
We're
live.
online.
We are
We're,
live
we're,
online.
we're
and
live
it's going to
online
be
and we're recording for an episode later on as well, so this is fun. Yeah, excellent.
Now I need to focus on two angles of my face.
Yeah, that's just take that bottle out of the
Okay.
yes, thank you, much better.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you can sense the animism already in the room. We've got cameras that have presence, right? And they're like tapping into other worlds in a sense.
To me, internet is just like an exo-neural network. You know what I mean? But that's for another.
That's
for another.
another
Let's
one,
stick
yeah.
to topic gender. We're not doing much
Yeah.
writing on this creative writing.
No.
But it's.
Well,
but the
have you got
discussion's
another
quite
exercise you want to?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's take that angle. So basically, you know, on the one hand, you have sexual union, which can be considered as like a sacred balance. Let's put it that way. And then you have people of mixed gender, which are actually basically a sexual union within themselves. You understand what I mean?
They're a union within themselves because
Well, yeah, they're basically a sexual union within themselves because they have both male and
Right,
female
right.
characteristics, right?
Yeah. Like.
So let's work on that line.
Okay. What's
Like just a one-page story.
So one more time, say it again. I need to.
The assignment. I want
Yeah.
to hear
Yes.
more clearly.
Yeah.
So
me too.
basically, take a one-page view, like in storyline or poetry or just description, whatever.
Yeah.
From the aspect of sexual union as being a balance, and I'm not defining it as per se in hetero or this or that or whatever, just sexual union.
But like within yourself or.
Well, that is the thing, between two people on the one hand, and
And
within
within yourself.
within a person on the other hand, and how you relate to that,
Okay. Okay. No, I got that.
including like light sides and dark sides and dominance and submission, and
Yeah.
throw in there whatever you like.
Okay.
Let's try that out.
I'm gonna write it in Dutch.
Excellent.
I'm a very bad student because I came
Yeah,
to the paper fetish shop without paper to write and without a pen. So I'm kind of laughing at myself.
Oh, that's okay. There was a pen lying on the ground
Feel like
here,
I'm
so
only
that's already
maybe-
saved.
Yes.
Homosexual
Yes,
point.
You actually-
I mean, that's
actually
the part where I
would.
get most confronted
Yes.
by
Yeah.
the topic we're talking about. So, like, I'm not sort of like a gay stan or anything,
Okay.
but it's, well, neither am I a hater, but it's more like, those are like the moments that I feel like I'm the most confronted by the topics we're talking about right now, about gender construct.
The moment where you have to write about it.
Yeah, no, just like homosexuality within itself, like, especially when you say like dominance and submissive, or like feminine and masculine, that's like a
To me
point where-
personally, that's all like long gone, and
Yeah.
I mean, that sort of concepts don't play in my mind anymore.
No,
But it's still what people define that play field by, you know.
yeah,
But you know, I mean, to me personally, it's you know, the beast with two backs.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because for sure, you know.
So is it about like mix of female and male sexuality, or integration into?
Male, female, totally sexual versus totally asexual, but like from the point of view of because basically, you know, at the moment you still have discrimination between like two sexes on the one hand and transgenders or homosexuals or this and that, what on the other. But if you look at the fact that they basically are an embodied combination of both genders, should actually put them on a level that both other sexes are constantly trying to achieve in union. Am I making sense to you?
I'm
So-
trying to get there.
Okay.
yeah. I feel the same way. We're on the same boat.
So, yeah, alright. So like the fluid gender identity, basically.
Yeah, but also in how far is there a correlation or a contradiction between a combination of genders in two people versus within the same person?
Oh yeah.
That's the main thing. Actually.
Alright.
Can I go on? Well, you were talking about how you do your makeup in a private zone and then go
Yeah.
out in public, and you said like maybe it's interesting for people to see somebody, you know, constructing their gender in a public area.
Yeah.
And my link to that is that when you don't see it like visually, you don't see me putting on my makeup in the metro, or maybe sometimes I do, but when a man approaches me in the metro, the way that I react, or like I sort of, it's not really a process, but it's more like that way you also can see like sort of the way that I construct gender.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more, in that part I sort of like, also you can see like sort of a process. But I'm not really sure if it would be considered a process now that I say it.
Huh. I wonder, I'm just like thinking, where does like humor come into all this? Like, I remember a few years ago seeing some pictures of my grandfather, I think, of in the Second World War, and he was out on base somewhere in Africa, and there was one of the pictures was of him and his mates, and they were dressed in bras and stuff, and just like being really exaggerated, you know, and just it's kind of funny to see because all the other pictures were like this, you know, proper men in
Well, of
army
course,
kind of outfits, and then
happens
there's
all
just
the
one
time,
picture,
yeah.
and then, like,
How you doing now?
anyway, so yeah, I don't know. There's something about the humor in that. Like,
Well,
I feel like in a lot of modern.
I find the current discussion on
Yeah.
gender and
It's
whatever, I find it all very interesting. The only appalling thing I find is that somebody came up with the word of gender neutrality, which feels like, you know,
Yeah,
hands
there's
have been
such a lack
sewn
of
up and
humour in
balls
that.
have been cut.
Yeah, no, there's a
You know,
real
it's,
lack
I
of
mean, you know,
playfulness in it,
yeah.
kind of thing.
To me, it should be full gender awareness, but anyway. But the thing is, if you go to natural tribes, like, you know, I enjoy the animist point of view, you know, nature people and stuff. And there it is, it's interesting to see that regardless of the fact that they don't have all these, you know, shopping streets full of women's clothing and you know, stereotype media and this and that, they also have pretty much every form from straight male, straight female to mixed to, you know.
Right.
But they basically deal with it like, oh, okay, you have this opposition between male and female, and then you have people in the middle that sort of embody both. So they're kind of sacred in a way, because they manage, you know, they're part of part of both worlds.
People who live in an animistic
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah.
And by animism you mean...
To them, people of, let's say, mixed gender
Yeah.
are considered like they have access to both worlds, both the male and the female world, and therefore they're sort of like a double spirit. So
Right.
they're special. You know what I mean? You have to treat them with a special
Where are
special
those
attention.
Where are those tribes?
Where are those tribes? You find that actually pretty much all over the world.
And they still exist now.
Africa, Polynesia, in Native American tribes as well. Yeah.
Gonna live there.
You gotta live there. No, I find that more and more that's sort of where modern society is going as well.
In animism, yeah, I think
animism for one thing. I mean
technology as
basically
animism.
science has proven it to be the only true religion, because you know animism states that everything is alive and everything is energy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's alive. You know.
But
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shortcut, obviously, but
it has to go deeper
I
than
like the idea.
just ideas, right? It has to be
But,
actually a way of looking and seeing things. Like I wonder what would it take to actually have this kind of what you were saying is like sacredness or something. How did you describe that again? Say that again. What you meant by this? There's something.
well, basically the fact that
postulate and said-
the fact that they're like of mixed gender or
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
to keep
yeah.
it simple, right? Also means that oh great, so now we're what?
We're
We are
live.
online. We are
We're
live online.
online
and it's going to be
and we're recording for an episode later on as well. So this is fun. Yeah, excellent.
Now I need to focus on two angles of my face.
Yeah, that's it. Just take that bottle out of the.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Much better.
Yeah. I mean, you
Um,
can sense the animism already in the room. We've got cameras that have presence, right? And they're like tapping into other worlds in a sense.
To me, internet is just like an exo-neural network. You know what I mean? But that's for another.
That's
for another.
another
Let's
one,
stick
yeah.
to topic gender. We're not doing much
Yeah.
writing on this creative writing.
No.
But it's
Well,
but the
have you got
discussion's
another
quite okay.
exercise you want to?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's take that angle. So basically, you know, on the one hand, you have sexual union, which can be considered as like a sacred balance. Let's put it that way. And then you have people of mixed gender, which are actually basically a sexual union within themselves. You understand what I mean?
They're a union within themselves because
Well, yeah, they're basically a sexual union within themselves because they have both male and female characteristics, right?
Yeah. Like.
So let's work on that line.
Okay. What's
Like just a one-page story.
So one more time, say it again. I need to know.
The assignment. I want
Yeah.
to hear
Yes.
it more clearly.
Yeah.
So
me too.
basically, take a one-page view, like in storyline or poetry or just description, whatever,
Yeah.
the aspect of sexual union as being a balance, and
Yeah.
I'm not defining it as per se in hetero or this or that or whatever, just sexual union.
But like within yourself, or
Well, that is the thing, between two people on the one hand, and within
yourself.
within a person on the other hand, and how you relate to that,
Okay. Okay. No, I got that.
including like light sides and dark sides, and dominance and submission, and
Yeah.
throw in there whatever you like.
Okay.
Let's try that out.
I'm gonna write it in Dutch.
Excellent.
I'm a very bad student because I came
Yeah,
to the paper fetish shop without paper to write and without a pen. So I'm kind of laughing at myself.
Oh, that's okay. There was a pen lying on the ground
Like
here,
a
so that's already
woman.
safe.
Yes.
Homosexual
so
point.
You actually-
I mean, that's
actually
the part where I
got
get most confronted
Yes.
by
Yeah.
the topic we're talking about. So, like, I'm not sort of like a gay stan or anything,
Okay.
but it's, well, neither am I a hater, but it's more like, those are like the moments that I feel like I'm the most confronted by the topics we're talking about right now, about gender construct.
The moment where you have to write about it.
Yeah, no, just like homosexuality within itself, like, especially when you say like dominance and submissive, or like feminine and masculine. That's like
To me
void
personally,
where-
that's all like long gone, and
Yeah.
doesn't. I mean, that sort of concepts don't play in my mind anymore.
No.
But it's still what people define that play field by, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, to me personally, it's you know, the beast with two backs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because for sure, you know.
So is it about like a mix of female and male sexuality, or integration into
Male, female, totally sexual versus totally asexual, but like from the point of view of because basically, you know, at the moment you still have discrimination between like two sexes on the one hand, and transgenders or homosexuals or this and that, or what, on the other. But if you look at the fact that they basically are an embodied combination of both genders, should actually put them on a level that both other sexes are constantly trying to achieve in union. Am I making sense to you?
I'm
So-
trying to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel the same way. We're on the same boat.
So, yeah, alright. So like the fluid gender identity, basically.
Yeah, but also in how far is there a correlation or a contradiction between a combination of genders in two people versus within the same person?
Oh yeah.
That's the main thing.
Alright. Gotcha. 1 page.
Yeah. Switch this.
I would
It's
like,
Yeah, what would it mean to be gender? Well, to me, I mean, the
Sounds
word
so
itself creeps me out.
Why
You know
does
what I
it
mean?
creep out? No, I don't know what I mean.
Because sexual dynamics is a passion. It's a contrast. It's opposites colliding and crashing and
And
making
it-
fireworks.
And it's kind
You
of
know
like
what I mean?
saying, no, I don't
It's
see that. That's
steam,
not there.
you know.
Mm.
And to me, gender neutrality sounds a lot more like a prolonging of this sexual bias that you
Uh-huh.
find in predominantly monotheistic religion, where it's sort of like you marry the spirit and that's the only sacred thing, and everything else is like
Mm.
debased, even though it's how the fuck you fucking keep the species alive. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that sort of it kind of creeps me out.
Mm.
Also, you know, I mean, okay, it's sci-fi and this and that, but you notice how all those alien tales basically evolve around the fact that they're like sexless.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
and then I get sort of like,
they are and they
we
aren't.
don't really want to go there. You know what I mean? It's sort of like that alienation through procrastination, if you want to call it that way. But that's sort of to be avoided at all costs. Like, you know, I mean, I'm much more into like gender expression and gender awareness and gender multiplication even than neutrality. I mean, it just totally sounds off to me.
But I also don't
it's
think.
like everybody's had the snip or something, you know. It just ew, no.
But is it even like possible? Like honestly, when you think about it, it's that when you look at like certain movies, like for instance, you have this child movie and it's about fish, and still they have like really clear male and feminine characters, but also just looking at myself, and people who are like maybe they would see themselves as not being like the norm when it comes to gender. I don't see myself as gender neutral at all. I know what my feminine side is and what my masculine side is, but then again I know that that side of me is feminine and that side of me is masculine, but there's no like neutrality within those aspects, you know.
So basically
so people who
in
claim to
relation
be
to
neutral,
that,
they are maybe more in balance with their masculinity and their femininity, or like want it to be 50-50, but then again they still have like things that are more feminine and show that, and you can be neutral in all the aspects that you do. It should be like, oh, I did this and that was masculine, and I do this and that's feminine, and maybe that's what they describe as neutral, but there cannot be neutrality within everything that you do. It's like impossible, I feel like.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I mean, to me, it's also like very reminiscent to the whole racism debate, where all of a sudden you know, like you can't talk about African culture because then suddenly you're defining people by the. Of course, you're defined by your culture.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that
it's bad.
that it's bad. You know, on the fucking contrary. You know. I mean, it's the richness of all the variety that actually makes life livable, and that makes it freaking interesting to be with so many varied people, whether it's racially or sexually or intellectually or emotionally or whatever. You know?
Is it possible to see gender as like an alien within, so that instead of like self-expression of gender, it's more that gender itself is like this alien that expresses itself, and rather than, because what we normally see is this kind of identification, like I am this, I am, and that kind of thing. But what if like the kind of, I don't know, like when I'm thinking about this, I'm getting the sense that gender is something that's very freaky actually, and weird and mysterious, and we don't really know what it is. Like we're using these words masculine and feminine, but like we don't really know fully what they mean. We have a sense.
That was the thing that I was thinking about while writing it down. Why is this masculine? Why is it feminine? Where does it come from? Where does it like stem from? You know? Yeah. But I mean,
so you think it's alien within?
Yeah.
I have something to share.
Okay.
When I had a boy, when he was born, it was like before he was born, before we did an echo, I knew 100% somehow, hormonally, that it's a boy. I knew that for sure, 100% from the beginning. And then somebody, as a present for the motherhood, gave me a book which is called Real Boys. And this book explains, I think we used it as one of the stones.
It was that good.
Expresses like that you have to be careful not to impose the stereotypes on your child, like boys don't cry, boys do that, boys do that. Be careful with all those war toys like guns, etc. Don't give it to the child. So we decided, okay, we keep away from all the guns, from all the things which are like extremely masculine. We let him to decide. And he's like 200% boys. He started liking this and wanting all those like war toys. So I think there is like hormonal balance in each human being, which kind of defines their behavior. It does work.
Yeah.
So from the beginning, it was like the boy is like defines himself. He
Yeah.
didn't impose anything
yeah,
cultural
of course.
from the above. He just defined his field of
But
interest.
then also you let him.
Yeah.
But
that's
then
the
also
old
you let
nature
him
of
make
nurture
his
thing.
choice, including the moment his choice basically went against what
Yeah.
you might even want. That's the main thing, you know. You know, like my daughter used to love to play with cars. Yeah, fine.
Me too. I was
You
playing
know,
with
so
boys
it's-
all the time.
So what? You know, doesn't. You know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
when she's older, what you notice is that what she basically loves is dynamics.
Yeah.
She wants things to keep moving and to keep going, and so that relates to a kid playing with cars. It's got fuck all to do with a gender pattern.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. I'm curious what you
Excellent.
wrote.
Well, yeah, we didn't
Yeah,
actually just talk about what we
stories.
wrote.
Mhm.
Stories. Who goes first this time? You started the last
Yeah,
round.
I don't wanna go.
Do you want to start this one?
Sure, I mean, shall I just
Did
read
you
out?
write something as well?
Yes, I did.
Excellent.
Shall I just read out what I read?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
read out what you
So
wrote.
I
yeah.
actually wrote a story about a guy called Alfred. Who,
Okay.
he was a man who never had sex, so he was an old man.
Okay, and is this fictional or
Yeah, it's fictional.
totally fictional?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, his virginity was never lost, but continuously saved. This is not to say that Alfred had not known desire, longing of various degrees, getting, having, satisfaction, giving, worshipping, but just that those desires remain spread out to a kind of enchanted cosmos. So the kettle when it had finished boiling, the gathering of pigeons around breadcrumbs he had thrown, even the passage of day to night, all could be sensed erotically because of his gift of virginity. So this leaves me with this kind of idea that perhaps the only way to stay open sexually is to be asexual, to not be neutered by the kind of one-dimensionality of the view that things are as they are in this body, and what I do with this body is as it is, and that's it for that. Yeah. So.
Interesting proposition. Like, I mean, you do touch on the basis of celibacy and monkhood and everything there.
But yeah, again, that's the main kind of point. This idea is it
Uh-huh.
like staying open sexually. Is that what does that mean? Is that possible if you're having sex? You know?
Yeah,
It's like, but then I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, interesting proposition.
Anyone else wanna?
Okay, Irina.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Turn
Okay.
turn your camera a bit so you're in the picture.
So I used a kind of extract from a real story, and I was thinking what could be the most like harsh, like contradiction between like opposition of the male and the female, and it just came to my mind, and it's a part of a bigger story which I'm trying to approach from different angles all the time. So I'm reading. When they opened you up, they started describing your body from the vagina, inner organs. You were meticulously, then I skipped the word because I wanted to say onderzocht. Meticulously researched, my dear sweet lady who always wanted to be a boy. A dirty Azeri man. I imagine a fat guy, a sleazy smile, hairy hands, taking ultimate freedom upon your body. I imagine his tongue pronouncing all those medical terms which he used in the describing of your pussy, and somehow the medical sounded especially sleazy. Here I saw the final victory of a male upon a female who always felt to be born in a wrong body. You were killed by a male too, a man who never felt sorry. They say marriages are written by God. other killings written by them too, by him too. I wanted to hold your hand, to become those crazy adventurous ladies who never needed men in their lives. God said differently. God is a male. So that's a sad story.
Mm.
I think
So that was
this thing about like the medical, what was it you said, the medical being more
Sleazy.
yeah, the medical being more sleazy. In its attempt to be neutral, the medical is actually more sleazy, you know, because it's trying to be like neutral.
It's very,
you know?
it's very perverted.
It's perverted, yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
word perversion is interesting. I mean, the word means like, one of its etymological meanings is like turning away. So it's like a very Christian idea, of course, that stillness is kind of noble, right, and movement is perverse, kind of thing, something like that.
Yeah, but no, it's also because you turn away from the actual desire and focus it on an object of desire
Yeah,
that
what's
no
the word
longer
for
has a
that? Yeah.
precise or or direct link to the original desire. You know,
Yeah, so I can't
like you go
remember
from
what it is.
desiring women to getting off on high heels.
So for me, that's like the representation of like the most extreme version of possession over somebody's body, because this body is dead and you can do whatever you want with this body because that's not already not.
Yeah, the person in it is no longer going to protest anything.
Exactly. So that's like the ultimate story of possession over somebody. So it's like, so that's the most, for me that was the most extreme version which I could think about, like the male and the female in the very like harsh contradiction. But it's a part of a bigger story which I'm trying to write, and it's like it goes in the circles because I keep returning to this story but I never finish it. So it's like, it's been already 10 years, or more than 10 years, I think, 10 years, that I'm trying to work with this story somehow. So, but is heavy.
Yeah, it is very heavy.
Yeah.
It was also very condensed.
Oh.
I mean, I reckon if you're working on it for 10 years, you have this passage written out over much more text.
Yeah, I have a lot of things, but yeah, I never finish it. So it's just so I wanted to write a story of actually that it started. It's complicated because it's looking back. It's like idealistic story of love of two women, and one of them dies, and the other one just it's the process of grieving, but it's also process of realizing that the other one who stayed alive never actually loved the other one, and there was this balance from the beginning, and if this balance wouldn't be there, nothing bad probably wouldn't happen, because first the things went
Okay, so
wrong.
basically she only realizes afterwards that she never loved her, but it was her love that caused her death in the first place.
Yes, so
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah, that's a classic tragedy indeed.
yeah. So and this is the most heavy part of the story. So the most sharp one.
Okay, let's turn the live feed to Tim and
Yeah, well,
the story.
It's good that you went first because mine is like a whole lot lighter than that. It's just a small little like story about one moment that I really realized and was really conscious of the feminine and masculine balance between two people. It was when I was with my best friend. Well, I'm just gonna read it. I was with my best friend Elia at the age of 15, walking through the city, as we got approached by a few men who were bigger than us and were talking aggressively. she told them aggressively to fuck off and that they needed to go away multiple times. As I got scared, she stood in front of me and she said, fuck off, we don't want your fucking attention, fuck off. That was basically like how I know her and how she would always like talk when we got approached. And I said to her, like, are you like never scared? Because like honestly, even before she said that, I was already scared by those men approaching us, feeling more fragile than maybe she was. And she just portrayed for me like this masculine figure who protected me. And she said to me like, no, I'm not scared because I, you know, even if they wanted to do something, I always have a knife in my pocket, so I'm not scared of them. And then later on I realized that for a long time she wasn't like my best friend, but she felt more of like my first boyfriend, even though she was the girl. And it maybe sounds a bit forced, but there was never something forced because I've known her for longer than 7 years now, and I was really young when I met her. And we always had this balance between us where she was more masculine, I was more feminine, and she was sort of like protecting me and I was taking care of her, that she didn't do anything crazy. And that was for me the first moment that I really realized that there is a balance between masculine and feminine. It's just not maybe the way most people perceive it.
Excellent.
And then also like another moment that I realized is that there's also a balance within yourself. And it's just an example that I told him, and I don't want to, you know, start saying things over and over again. But I was thinking about this just as I'm telling my dad about how my new lipstick color matches my face more nicely and it's more complimentary, and how I'm so happy with it. Like an hour later, I can be like, you know, fighting with him. You know, how do you say that in English? Like stoeien, that you're like, you know, wrestling with each other
just play
to
fighting.
see, to see who is stronger. And that's also like the thing within myself, that I know that I have that feminine side and also that masculine side. So yeah, like it's such a big contradiction within, like, with your story and mine, but it's a good thing to keep things, you know, yeah, to keep the contrast within.
Yeah.
Which that's just when I think about, you know, feminine and masculine balance between people or within yourself, those things just come to mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well.
Excellent. Right. Loving yourself, cock or cunt bearing, acknowledging, performing, communicating. Who's the face in the mirror? The body in the bed, under strain, walking down the street. In passion's cauldron of loving heat we dissipate and slowly melt, giving each other a balance and exchange. Loving yourself in pain and relief, do we hurt each other over identifying with being more than is perceived? Do we limit our behavior to what we deem acceptable to others, making them hold us back like drunks in the streets, needing to shout, "Hold me back or I'll kill him," while fearing most just to be knocked out, found out, feeling less than proud over never surpassing the common denominator of what you should, could, must aspire to. Yet no one can put parameters on your experience of the self. Okay, fine, whatever. That's basically how I feel about it.
The sense of the body in the bed, like, for me, that body was dead. It wasn't like alive. I don't know how it was for you.
Affected culturally by images more than we are affected by the real life. So we kind of translate the images into our personal experiences. So it's funny because when you were reading the piece, I was not relating to my previous experiences, which is a lot, but I was relating to some certain images which I saw from other photographers.
So at that point, you're making an abstraction from your own experience into
not even from my own experience, is from pictures made by
Yeah,
others.
that's what I
Yeah.
mean by
Yeah.
not relating it to
Yes.
your own experiences. You're abstracting from your own experiences. You're placing yourself beyond
Yeah.
what your experiences give you as a view on life or as a view on the subject.
Yeah.
Mm.
Maybe I mean that images which we see and texts which we read get more stronger like influence on us than the direct experience, because we cannot translate so much direct experience into the like it's in our memory, but somehow it doesn't become an image so much. And
Yeah. I mean, well, someone like James Hillman, the American psychoanalyst, he would, say like there's nothing abstract about images at all. So like for example, dream images, they don't communicate some meaning. They tell you where you are. They're totally exact. They're very, very precise. They might be ambiguous in terms of what meaning you can make, but there's no meaning to be deciphered from an image. An image is just what it is, kind of thing. So yeah, in that sense, they kind of have an autonomy as well, images. You know what I mean? They don't depend on our giving them meaning. The meaning they have is just what they have, kind of thing. They don't really need us to kind of interpret them, figure them out, kind of thing.
Yeah, what you do anyway.
Wow. Yeah, but it kind of takes you away from it. Takes you away from the image.
No, because I mean, basically the way you interpret it is basically adapting it to the same parameters as you put on the rest of your playfield of reality. Let's put it that way. So at that moment you sort of make them your own, but that doesn't make them any less, because that's what you do with it. The moment you acquire information, you appropriate it, because you translate it to your mind, to your frequency, to your feeling, and somebody else will take it up a slightly different way, because it all tunes slightly differently.
Wow.
interesting.
This is becoming rather philosophical.
Yeah, I mean.
No, which is fine by me. That's what it.
I guess. Well, I think that's the main thing. If we just return to the beginning, it's it's not about finding an answer. It's just opening things up, turning over stones.
Definitely.
A lot can come out of this.
It's not about making a point. It's about opening up dimensions.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Definitely. Good. Feels like a conclusion.
Yeah. Is there anything
Yeah.
else anyone wants to say
Well,
before we wrap up? Yes?
What you were talking about is that, like, thinking of appropriating something with a certain image, why should we perceive that as something bad? Because I feel like that gives isn't that like also sort of what art is? What art makes special for somebody is that when you look at a certain piece of art, it creates a certain reaction, but that's very subjective, so that's only
Yeah, of course.
like for you.
Yeah.
And it's only for you because you associate certain things with that kind of image, and that's what makes it special. But like you can look at it from a way broader view. Is maybe that's also like that's the reason why you fall in love with people. That's like sort of like your own interpretation of stuff, apart from looking at it realistically as it is.
Yeah.
That's like sort of what creates
Yeah, of course.
life.
It's your specific view of a certain
Yeah.
person that makes you fall in love.
I feel like when you lose it,
Whether
you
they're
are
aware of
depressed.
those angles that you're in love with or not.
Yeah.
And that often leads to the drama and the tragedy,
Yeah.
because you can see
Yeah.
stuff in other people that
Totally.
they're not aware of and they don't even want to know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cosmic grandiosity at the core of all of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You never kind of get past that. Like,
Well, no, but that is a big part of art. It's
Yeah.
basically you put a mirror on society.
Yeah,
But it has to be done in such a way that everybody both sees the world and themselves in that mirror.
yeah,
So it has to be open to interpretation. It has to be open to
yeah,
it has to be faceted.
yeah. And another question that I have is that why were you talking about? You were saying that when you look at the picture of the tree, for instance, it's like it is with itself, you know. The tree, it's all up to you how you interpret it, but it's like sort of its own thing. But that made me think about as if that's the way that I interpreted the way that you said it. But is it a bad thing to associate things with certain images that are like because that's the way that's how I felt when you said it, that it's like that we shouldn't be associating things who are like just itself.
What did I say? Which, you know, about the first writing?
Yes. No, about the thing you said about the image of the trees, that it's just like a tree, and it's like up to you, like it doesn't need your interpretation to know it's a tree.
Okay.
Yeah, but that made me think about, is it a bad thing to interpret it like as more than a tree?
Oh,
of
not
course
at
not.
all. Not at all.
No.
Of course not.
But I would say the only badness or something is whenever there's like a realist kind of quality in it, like, oh, this is really true.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not necessary to consider something to be really true.
Yeah, no.
No, that's just hammering a lid on the coffin of reality, isn't it?
Yeah. And you know, like, we can talk about words as like trapping experiences in meaning,
Yeah.
and then like words like poetic expression that open up the meaning, that shatter the vessel.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, just be conscious of your own interpretation of things, and that it doesn't necessarily make that thing what you think it is.
There's
Yeah,
something
it
else that-
doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
No.
You know, there's always more there than you can actually
Yeah.
capture or whatever, which is great. You know, otherwise the fun would stop at a certain.
Yeah.
I'm afraid. You know what I mean? It's sort of like.
There's one more thing I want to add to that, and it's not like a rational answer or anything. It's just an image that I saw today of a tree in Vondel Park that had been cut off at the heart. And I was sitting with someone and I said, how does that make you feel, seeing this tree that was cut in half? And she stared for a while and kept staring, and then she said, like, nothing. I was like, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. You know?
Yeah.
Who said that? The
Lots.
The friend I was sat with.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, who is this?
Yeah.
Oh,
No, the thing is that I feel like that's why I wanted to know that more clearly if that was really the statement that you were making, which you were not. But like, out of my own experience, when you start looking at things like super realistically, like this is a chair and that's it, or that's a tree and that's it, that's like, for me, I associate that with like being depressed, because that way when you look at everything like that,
Yeah.
there's no more emotion or like
Right,
certain
right.
feeling that comes from it, you know, like
Yeah.
this is a chair in reality, but I like looking at it, I like sitting on it, I think it's pretty, I like this fabric,
Yeah.
or like a certain tree reminds me of a tree that I used to climb in as a child.
Right.
So, you know, interpretation of stuff for me is like one of the most important things, because
Yeah,
that
definitely.
gives a reaction, you know?
I mean, yeah, like, what would it be like to play with the view that this tree loves me, you know, or
Yeah.
something like that, and then what kind of love? You know,
Yeah.
what kind of love does this tree have for me? Because it's a different species, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and you can do that without needing to really believe that the tree really loves you. It's like you're kind of very conscious of the fact that I'm playing here with an interpretation.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what does that actually do to my experience, my being, when I play with the idea that objects love me and I love it, like a tree loves me and I love it? It
Yeah.
probably opens things up, actually. You know?
But isn't it like interesting to think about, instead of talking about trees and chairs, about the way that you then like communicate with the people around you, if you are really conscious of the way that you interpret them and the way that you look at them, and then how you treat them according to the way that you interpret them.
Yeah.
But that's like something that you, well, at least for me, I need to think about, like one person in it's the only word in English I can pronounce, specific. You need to think about one person in specific, and then think about the way that you interpret them, and how that affects how they perceive you, I don't know, it's something interesting. I'm gonna think.
I was thinking that when you think about the tree, is like this platonic idea of like the ideal object. You cannot think about like a tree in general.
No.
You always imagine like a certain tree in your imagination.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
high
yeah,
it
yeah.
is, how
What it
is
looks
it
like.
green or is it like winter
And
tree
you make
without
this
leaves.
crude match kind
So
of.
you
Yeah.
kind of imagine a specific tree in your head, and then like about writing, what is interesting is, is it enough just to name a tree in your text, or how much of description do you need to complete the whole image and idea of a tree, and or just say tree? Because that's the idea of Leo Tolstoy, the idea of estrangement, when he relates to every object, like he sees it for the first time in his life. There is a big passage over about actually a tree on the field, on the battlefield in the Napoleon War, where he like uses a tree as a symbol of like life and wisdom, the tree who has seen everything and who actually helps to interpret the whole history. And he has maybe 20 pages description of one tree.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. No, I mean the world becomes a lot more interesting when you consider everything to be animate. Actually, you know what I mean? Like I have a friend who lives in Leiden, and when you walk through those cobble streets, you just feel the ghosts walking through you. You know, it's like one of the oldest university cities in the world, which has played a very crucial role in safeguarding freedom of thought in numerous periods in history, you know, and like during the Spanish occupation, this and that and all the other. But when you walk through those streets, you really just feel the ghosts. You know, you feel these scholars still walking around discussing and
presence,
laughing and
presence.
thinking and like they're almost like shouting in your ear, like you know.
I think that's something that I've always
There,
found.
you know, you feel that like in the cobblestones and in the bricks and you know.
Something I've always found really interesting about the desert as a place, I guess to be, this sense came from the Californian desert, Mojave Desert specifically. It's this sense that like, so it's all rock everywhere, which rocks have formed from water shaping them over like a really, really long time, but there's no water anywhere. So there's a strong presence of the past in a place, and it's a really strange thing because it's like, everything here is defined by the past, but the thing that defined it is totally absent.
Yeah, you get that in Czechia, for instance, as well in the landscape. Those are like this sandstone hills, but they've actually been carved out because like thousands of years ago it was a seabed. So you get like table rocks, which are like wide like that on the top and narrow like that underneath because the currents have wiped them out. But they're still there, like, you know, so it's like really extremely surreal, and it does give you that feeling of like time passes like zoom, instead of the way how we experience it.
And to tie this into what you were saying, I mean, I think with the tree, it's like, if you think about like, say a tree that's been knocked over from a storm or wind or something, and it's like, it's still growing, but now it's not this upright thing anymore. And there's an opportunity there to forget that it's a tree. And when there's the opportunity to forget that something is a pen, a tree, or whatever, there's an opportunity to fall in love with it in a new way, you know. It reminds me a bit of Aldous Huxley in The Doors of Perception, you know, and the whole, he's on mescaline and he sees the creases in his trousers and he stares at it for like an hour or something, totally forgetting that these are creases in trousers, you know. So there's this like drifting quality, that's something about that that's like got a loving kind of quality to it. I don't know.
Nice.
So that ties into basically the more fluid you perceive and experiment and accept gender, the more natural and dynamic and loving and healthy and healing it becomes.
Beautiful.
When I was in Norway, I met a person who does a photo project on a topic how trees communicate. how they talk, how they express themselves,
Yeah.
and she could tell a lot about it. It's very
That's for
fascinating.
next time. Then.
Yeah.
How trees communicate. We'll save that one.
My dad always used to talk about this song where they talk about when you walk through a forest, it's so peaceful, but in the meantime, all those trees are like fighting with each other to get like the most rays of sun, and they're like all competing to get higher and higher and grow bigger and bigger to get more sun. So how it's for you peaceful, it's for them like, yeah,
Well,
surviving.
that's very much an interpretation. You know, I mean, we see. You
Oh,
know,
really?
if you see life from the imperialistic conquering point of view, then yeah, they're all fighting. But actually, if you look at a forest, the way it's divided in levels,
Yeah.
there's a lot more equalities in there. Like, you know.
I heard a really charming, innocent line recently. Mushrooms grow around trees. That's why the trees get high. Something so childlike about that.
Adorably silly. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Oh.
Yeah.
And there is a whole spiritual movement who believe that mushrooms are living and thinking creatures.
Really?
And there was a big
Oh, yeah,
joke.
wicked sense of humor.
Yeah. But there is a whole big movement, and the biggest joke was that in the end of Soviet Union there was one underground like artist and musician who made a whole like documentary program, like explaining that the scientists discovered that Lenin actually was a mushroom. And he like spread it everywhere, and
Yes,
the Soviet
yes,
people
yes.
were so much believing television,
Oh
they
my
kind of
gosh.
started believing that like sensational news.
Mhm.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, let's not get into gender fungi and stuff like. You know. Okay, cool.
So what's the next?
I guess that kind of rounds up the creative writing discussion for
Yeah.
this evening.
Was
a
Thank
good
you,
opener.
everyone. Yeah,
Right
yeah.
now.
That was a good opener.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's,
Excellent.
until next time.
Yes, next week.
Next
Yeah.
week we just made it as a like experimental version. Of
Well, yeah, sure, but
it,
that's the
and
whole
we'll
thing, you know.
continue and
great
start
stuff.
rolling,
Yeah, yeah.
because probably they already.
Life is a bunch of experiments, you know.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, the one thing that's like annoying, and I'm